Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Autism or Story podcast. Today, I have the opportunity to chat with Bailey Proctor. Bailey is a fellow autism mom that I met on Instagram. She has a non speaking autistic son, just like my Kyler, almost the same age, and they just recently started their spelling journey. And so today we're going to be talking all about that. Bailey, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, and we're going to start from there.
Hi, I am so excited. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Bailey. I live in Georgia. I'm a registered nurse and I have three children. Me and my husband have three. We have a neurotypical 16-year-old daughter, a neurotypical 8-year-old son, and then Barrett Ezra is our non speaker. He is 7 years old and he is autistic. And that's kind of us in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So, yeah, I wanted to start from like the beginning of your autism journey. Tell us about how you found out that your son had autism, the autism diagnosis.
Course. So for us, our boys, they are 16 months apart, and Barrett's the youngest. So he was really meeting all of his milestones up to around 18 months regularly, just like his brother did. And then we started noticing some regression for him. The biggest thing was he lost his words. He was saying things like cheese and at the camera and mom, dad. He had those words, and then it was like we realized he no longer had those words anymore. And another big thing for us was he stopped responding to his name. We would call him and he wouldn't turn around. For a while, we were like, well, maybe he can't hear. But then we would do things like turn a toy on and hide it behind our back, and he would immediately go to the toy. But we went through the thorough assessment. We went and had his hearing checked, and it was completely fine. Honestly, we were kind of hoping that would be what the issue
What it
was, so we
was,
could
yeah.
fix it, but it wasn't. Deep in our hearts, my husband and I, we're both nurses, we're both registered nurses, and having a child that was 16 months older, we really kind of knew what to expect because it was still fresh for us. And we just knew in our gut that he was autistic. We just had that feeling. We never went through like the denial phase very much. I mean, of course, there was the time where you're Googling and you're like, okay, well, this definitely looks like it is, but he doesn't do this, so maybe not. We did have that moment where we were trying to maybe convince ourselves that that maybe wasn't what it was, but we knew we had to advocate at the pediatrician to even get the evaluation. They were gonna let it just. He's like, he's a boy, he's the youngest, he'll be fine. And we did not leave the pediatrician that day without a referral to get him evaluated because we just knew that's what it was.
Yeah, I can relate to that part of having to advocate. I did
Yes.
that because, yeah, so for us, my son had severe anemia before we figured out that he had autism. So it was kind of hiding in that say because when you're anemic, you're so like um tired and like
Hmm.
almost lifeless. And
Yes.
so they said, oh, it was just the anemia, wait a little bit for because he had infusions, two iron
Hmm.
infusions because the liquid ones weren't working, so they were like, wait until the infusions work out. So like 2 weeks went by, a month went by, 2 3 months. I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm noticing that he's not listening to us. And they're like, oh
Hmm.
no, just wait it out. Boys are like that. Yeah. So I
Yep.
can relate to having
Yep.
to advocate. And I ended up getting my, not with the help of the pediatrician whatsoever. So
Oh,
yeah.
unfortunately, I feel like that's a huge disservice to a lot of families like ours because they're not catching it. They don't recognize it as early as I wish that they would. And then a lot of the times it feels like it's almost swept under the rug a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why that is, but yeah, I,
Hmm.
I wish that they had been more helpful.
Hmm.
It felt very lonely. At least you guys
Yes.
didn't. You shared that you didn't go through the denial phase much. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't have a choice, so most of the people around me were going through it, and I
Uh-huh.
did a little bit, but I had to act. So it felt like I was the only one fighting, and so it was very n- not helpful for the to hear the doctors say that, and my husband, was still listening to
Yes.
the doctors. I don't hold it
Mhm.
against him, but that's just how it was. And so, yeah, I would wish
Because
that.
really, you're hoping what the doctor's saying is true. You would rather
Yeah.
him be right, you know? So
Yes.
you can see how it's so easy to be like, okay, I'm going to
Yes.
trust the professional, because
Mm-hmm.
that's really what your heart and your gut, they want that so bad as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, that's why I don't hold it against my husband, because
Yeah.
I know the feeling. You just want to believe it, but I could see it. I knew it. Us moms, we always
Oh,
know. We
that
we always know.
intuition always.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, yeah, I wish that I just hope that, things are different for others as time goes on, as, the awareness is out there. I'm hoping that, the pediatricians are more, you know, believe the parents when they
I
say this
agree.
is
And I
happening.
will say the pediatrician that was kind of pushing back with me, I ended up seeing him a couple years later, well into our autism journey. And I brought up the topic of autism with him. It was a sick visit that we went to. And I said,
hmm
have you noticed a trend where you're seeing more autism families coming in and getting evaluations? And he, at that point, he said, oh yeah. He said, I do. And it made me feel a lot better because this was a couple years later, and I'm like, thank good, maybe he's learned something from that
Yeah.
experience with us potentially, or
Yeah.
maybe things are just shifting, or maybe they are getting more training. I don't really know exactly what it was, but it gave me, I felt so much better hearing him say those words whenever I was in there, because I
Yeah.
was like, okay, this is the
Yes.
way we need to be looking at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just helps you know that at least he's more open to it. At
Mhm,
least he's not, telling those families to wait, or that that's not what it is. That just
mhm.
Yeah, it's good to hear. So then after you got a diagnosis, so what are some therapies that you started on in the beginning, and just wondering which therapies that you saw that worked for your son, or some that you noticed that really didn't, because there are some that just don't work for our non-speaking kids.
Yes. So after we got his diagnosis, they basically gave us that little folder that had the prescriptions for ABA. For him, it was OT and speech. We did not need the PT services. So we took that little folder and we were like, okay, well, this is what they're telling us to do. And they told us that the ABA was the gold standard. That's what we wanted. That's what they wanted us to do. So we just we signed up for everything, right? We got on the wait list, and we started at this point, Barrett, we were already in speech and OT because we could do babies can't wait, the early intervention. So we had already started
Okay.
those. But then once we got the prescription for the ABA, that's whenever we finally got in on a spot in this clinic. And I had to drive 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back home twice a day, because of this particular one. And we did 6 months of ABA therapy. And then at that point, Barrett had turned 3 years old. And in our county, once you turn three, you can go into the school system and they can
Okay.
offer a lot of those services. So we had to really pray about it because here's our little boy who's three. We're taking him to an ABA clinic 5 days a week. He would go 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then we would take him to speech twice a week privately and OT twice a week privately, like in the afternoons. And then, so it's like, okay, so what do we do? Do we let him go in the school system all day? And then we take him to ABA after he gets out for 4 hours, 5 days a week. And then we
Oh my
also
goodness.
do those private services. And we just felt in our hearts that that was just too much for a little boy. Like he needed time to be a little boy
Uh,
instead of just
yes.
doing therapy in school all day long. So here we were, we had to make this decision on our own of pulling him from ABA or the school system, or some people do a combination of both. But after much
Yeah.
prayer and discussion and research, my husband and I decided that we wanted to try the school system and pull him from ABA. For us, ABA, there was 6 months of it. I know that there is different paths for everybody, but we just did not feel like that was the path that we wanted to take.
Hmm.
So we went into the school system at 3. We continued to do the private OT and private speech in addition to that. And that's now we're in first grade and we're still pretty much on that exact same journey, except the OT and speech, those can be hard to get slots or therapists leave or clinics close. So that's
Yeah.
kind of always been revolving and changing, but right now he's still doing OT and speech privately, and then he goes to the school system. And more recently, we started Spell to Communicate. That's the newer thing that we have found out about, and we do feel really good about that.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm so excited that you guys have started your spelling journey. For us, I think for most, families that have found it, we actually feel like that's the one that will really help our kids, be able to communicate because of the nature of their kind of autism.
Absolutely. We feel in our gut, we just know, we feel so confident about this choice, this decision for Barrett, and we know it's going to be a long journey. We know it's going to be a
Mhm.
marathon. It's definitely not going to be a sprint, and we're at peace with that, because we feel
Yeah,
so confident that we are finally on the right path, and we're willing to work for it, and we're going to be just patient through the process, because I do believe at the end goal, this is going to give Barrett not just a better quality of life, but this can have him thriving and being able to communicate and let us know exactly how he feels. What does he like? What does he
yeah.
love? How does he feel?
Hmm.
It's, I just feel like I just know this is like
Yes,
prayer. I'm a big woman of faith, and I just feel like the
yes,
Lord has been kind of bringing me on this path a little bit at a time. And now that I'm kind of looking back, I can see how it was progressing and how He was closing doors and opening them and closing and opening. Because I always pray very specifically. I'm like, Jesus, I need you to completely shut doors if that's not the path we need to take. Because if you leave it up to me, I potentially could make the wrong choice.
yeah,
And then I've always asked for that, and He will shut things down, or He will make it very clear on which path we should take, and I just listen to
yeah.
however he's trying to show me.
Oh, I just love that. Yeah, I love it because that I can relate to that. I've always felt like with a child that is a non-speaker, most of the times it's hard to know what to do for him, what kind of therapies would work. The only way is, for me at least, has been having the spirit, being close to the spirit, and following the spirit. Because I've always gotten answers. Sometimes I'm just like, how did I know that that was what I was supposed to do?
Yes.
It's really the spirit guiding us. I truly believe that our mother's instinct is the spirit guiding us. It's Heavenly Father, it's God working with us hand in hand to take care of our children, like all of our children. But sometimes, specifically with our children who are non speakers, who can't tell us what they need or how they're feeling, really following what the spirit says is the only way we will know how or what is right,
Oh, that gave
so
me
yeah.
goosebumps, because that's exactly it. That it truly is. And like we pray for wisdom and discernment, for because we're like, we don't need our earthly worldly minds and brains to, we really need Him to come in and really show us and guide us, because it's so easy for us to make those mistakes or the wrong
Mhm.
decision. But I'm fully confident in my Lord. I know that He loves Barrett way more than I ever could, and I love that little boy so dang much, but it really
Yes.
is. That's how, and honestly, I don't think I know I wouldn't be able to do this journey without Jesus. It's already very,
Yeah.
very challenging.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Him, I honestly don't know how we would survive, because it is so challenging.
Yeah, it definitely is. It really is. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for me too. I don't know how I could have been able to do it. I really
Mm-mm.
don't. It's That's the only way. I feel like he puts us on this path knowing that it is hard, it's going to be hard, but he would never give us a hardship without giving us the tools or like being there to help us through it. And I truly believe that the most important tool that he's given us is the spirit to guide
Yeah.
us.
I
and we
love it.
just have to try to stick with him and not always, try to take care of that. Another thing that I've learned is I'm not in control here. Any hardship shows up. I've had the experience where I kind of like, I'm just like worried. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But he will take care of it. And I've always seen it. He always takes care of it. So now I know that I don't have to waste my time feeling frustrated or sad or wondering what's going to happen, because I know sooner or later it will be taken care of. So I
Mm-hmm.
just need to bring it to him and just know that it will be taken care of, and just pray and just know that he will make a way, and he always does. He
He
always has.
does. And a lot of the times it's not instantly and it's not in the
Yeah.
time frame we're hoping for. And a lot
Yeah.
of the times I feel like we can take multiple steps backwards. We're regressing and we're like, Lord, where are you? I don't know. It just feels like you left us. But in reality, he has not. And then you'll see like a progression, just like a shoot of growth. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
there you are. I see what you were doing. You were
Yeah.
here all along. And I don't
Yeah.
know why I ever get weary sometimes because I know exactly the truth, but it's hard. Our
Yeah.
human nature is
Yes.
just hard.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really hard, which is why I feel like we always have to remind ourselves, which is why we have the scriptures and we always have to remember the word, because what he says is true. So we
Hmm.
should just trust his word. And
Yes.
but it's hard when you're in that moment. Our,
Oh,
like
so
you
hard.
said, our human our human nature is just like we get kind of nervous and worry, but we always have to remind ourselves that he
Hmm.
is there and he will take care of it. He always
Exactly.
does.
He does. I think the problem is sometimes as we get so exhausted and so beat down, that's whenever a lot of those negative thoughts come in, and then they start spiraling on us.
Mhm.
And that it's not our fault. It's just the way that it is. Sometimes because things can get pretty hard, and then you get sleep deprived, and then all those little
Yeah.
layers they just kind of add up, and then there you are, and you just like need refreshed. You just need like a little bit of
Yes.
respite to get your mind back where it needs to be, because it
Yeah.
can be so easy to slip and to spiral in those negative thoughts sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know it. Yeah. Yeah, for me, what has made like a huge change in trusting that this was God's plan for my son is having listened to the telepathy tapes. After listening to the telepathy tapes and hearing from these kids, I was able to accept fully. Before I listened to the telepathy tapes, I was struggling with anxiety
Hmm.
about my son, about the future. I just was really struggling. Even though I might have not like noticed in the moment, but afterwards I was like, wow, I really was struggling, and now I'm not. Like things are so much better. It just helped me accept my son's
Hmm.
diagnosis fully. I do not ask why this is happening anymore, because I used to in the beginning. I used to really struggle, like, why is this happening? Like,
Hmm.
really, why? That's gone. Like there is no even question for it. That is something I will not have to ask again, just
Hmm.
from listening to the telepathy tapes. And now I'm just so excited about the future. And if anything happens, I'm able to just know that there is a reason, because the telepathy tapes came to open up my world and help me understand my son's world. But also, there are still some mysteries, a lot of mysteries that it
A lot of
came with.
mysteries. Yes.
But still, I just feel like I just know that there's something bigger, that
Oh,
why this is happening. So it's not like a worry is so much. It's just like I don't panic anymore. I'm not struggling with the anxiety that I used to.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like they brought a lot of peace, the telepathy tapes.
Yeah.
So for us, what's very interesting is the telepathy tapes. I now look back and I see that God had us, he was prepping us for the telepathy tapes to come. Because I think if I would have just listened to those tapes a couple of years ago, I would have been like, what in the heck? This is crazy. This is what I would not, I don't know if I would have been at a place to have been receptive to it a few
Yeah.
years ago. But because of now just seeing all of the little things that he was opening doors for, closing doors, giving opportunities, connecting me with other people, um, I, the Underestimated book,
Yeah.
and then the Spellers documentary.
The
That was
spell.
whenever I first learned about spell to communicate, and for me, that was
Okay.
like, okay, this is something. I just knew in my heart. I'm like, there's more to this. There is
Yeah.
way more, and that's whenever I started a little bit more, following another person on Instagram that was teaching their child how to spell. I dove really deep into all of the books and podcasts and things that I could find on non-speakers after they became
Yeah.
open. And I could not get enough of these things. Connecting with their parents. That was
Yeah.
where I was, it just gave me more and more peace. I just knew. I'm like, this is the path. There is something. But the hard part about it is there's so many skeptics and so many people that don't believe in it that sometimes they can be so loud that it
Yeah.
really, it kind of makes you get to a point where you're like, well, do they just think I'm crazy? Everybody else. But I've gotten to the point where I don't care because I really do feel like I know the truth. I know exactly who my son is. Learning to presume competence has been an absolute game changer in our house, not just for him but for us. And
Yeah.
it was I always had this before I even heard about any of these things. I've been telling people this for years. I've said there's something about Barrett. Every once in a while I'll see it. If you pay attention, it's almost like there's like a little opening and I can see it, a sliver, and I make that contact with him and I'm like, he's in there. I see him,
Yeah.
I feel it. He
Mhm.
shows me something, but then before you know it, it closes again. It's like you get these
Yeah.
little glimpses, they open and they close. And but
Yeah.
see, that has always been occurring from the very beginning. And I but they would be so fleeting sometimes. And then I would be like, and
Okay.
then it would come back to the behaviors or the things, and you're like, oh, he doesn't seem like he's in there. But there was always that nudge for me. And then I started, all of these other things started coming out, for the documentaries and the books and things like that. And that was like, okay, that was what that little glimmer, that little snippet was that I was seeing
Yeah.
all of this time. And then once the telepathy tapes hit, I was like, holy moly. I was like, this is much bigger than I could have ever imagined. There's
Yeah.
so many individuals out there. And it just changed everything. It literally just changed everything. And not just the telepathy part so much as just the spelling. That to
Mhm.
me is just, I'm like, this is the path for my son to take. Yes, there's other things that he could be working on, going to speech, working on different things in the school, but this is what I want to focus on. And I'm a full believer in it. I think it's the brain body disconnect 110%. I think that he is
Yeah.
understanding absolutely everything that we say, even though his body makes it seem otherwise. I'm at peace with that. And I think a lot of the reason why I am at peace with that is because I pray all the time, Lord, if I am on the wrong path, if I am believing something that is untrue, if I'm being misled, or if I'm just wishful thinking, I
Mhm.
need you to put a hard stop on this. I need you to shut these doors and make it where it's not a possibility or well I will know, but instead it's the opposite that's happening. Like for example,
Yeah.
this spell center in Atlanta that's an hour from my house just opened. We got to meet with
Yeah.
Dana Johnson, who's a co-founder. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
that wrote
saw.
this the guidebook. Like all of these things, I'm like, I do not feel like all of these little pieces would be
Yeah.
adding up if we were not on the wrong, like why would the Lord be sending me all of these things? We have a practitioner, Austin, is his name. He's an incredible human being. And then like I'm a nurse, I'll be evaluating a patient, and then they're like, oh well, I have a non-speaking son that's an adult now. Have you heard of spelling? They'll ask me. I'm like, yes, actually. And then they'll have Austin was their practitioner. It's just very, to me, I call those God winks. I feel like God is
Yeah.
giving me all these winks, and he's like, you're on the right path, keep going.
Yes.
And that gives me full confidence. And another
Yeah.
thing is, I think that these children were given to us for a huge purpose. I always said, okay, I don't really understand why this is a very painful journey. This is very hard on the whole family because a lot of times you'll spiral. You'll be like, well, what did we do wrong? Was there something I
Mhm.
did when I was pregnant? Is
Yeah.
this something, But I've learned it's not. It's that my child, Barrett, was given to us for very specific reason, for purpose and for meaning. And I haven't always known exactly what that was going to look like, but now I know what it looks like. He needs
Yeah.
us to help shine light on this community of the non-speakers. So everyone else will have this opportunity. And I know by us sharing at the very beginning stages where he's not spelling, right? He's not doing what all these adults are doing, but I believe in it
Yes,
so much that I'm like, the world needs to see someone from the jump,
the
someone that says,
beginning.
you know what? That mom is a believer, and she is showing us from the start how he can do it, because I truly believe all of them can. I really do.
Mhm.
And it's going to look very differently for every kid. But I do believe all of them are capable if they are given the opportunity.
That is so true, so true. And that's why I'm so excited for you and your community that you've created on Instagram to see you start from the beginning with your son. We don't only need to see the success stories, the people that have already been through it and that are already open. It's
Yes.
really important to see the beginnings of it because a lot of the parents, might be feeling like on the fence about it. They don't
Hmm.
know. And you'll be able to show everything from the beginning. Like they could even relate to some feelings that you might have in the beginning, where
Hmm.
maybe like for us, for example, it's hard in the beginning, even though you believe, I believe. But
Yeah.
it's tough because sometimes they push back. They don't,
Oh,
it seems like
yeah.
they don't want to spell. They don't want to.
Right.
So you're like, this is never going to work. But you just know, because you would not have started on the journey without, if you didn't really believe. So I know, but I think others need to see that because for me, I didn't see it for a while and I struggled and I thought maybe I was the only one. Maybe I was doing something wrong, that my son
Hmm.
didn't want to spell with me. I wouldn't open up and I would see others posting that everything looks great. And then I saw a video, I think it was by, I'm not sure if it was Jenna, but anyways, she was sharing that she also had an experience like that with her son, and how when you go on social media, sometimes the people that are sharing, practicing with their kids, they're not showing you the meltdown.
Oh,
They're not showing
exactly.
you where they were trying to keep them on the chair, and they're not showing you where their child really didn't. They're showing like they don't want to spell. And she shared that it's not that they don't want to, but like what we know, their bodies and their brain are not connected, and sometimes their bodies will do things that they don't mean to do. These kids really want, they know that spelling is the answer, but their bodies sometimes just, you know will make it so look like they don't want to. So that's something that I didn't know, and it's good to know. And I'm just excited for you to, yeah, your journey will help a lot of parents, feel strengthened, and also gain hope, get hope, and
Thank
jump
you.
on
The thing,
this
whenever I first
journey.
started sharing our autism story, a couple years now, I guess, on Instagram, it was just on my heart just to start sharing. At this point, spelling was not even on the radar. It was
Hmm.
almost just coming from the perspective of being transparent and real, and to let people know like the hard stuff, but there's still a lot of joy in the journey. And to
Yes.
just be, I think there's so many moms that just need someone that's just relatable, right? Like, you know what, we're
Yeah.
having bad days too. My house is a wreck today. The behaviors are, we flooded the house over here, like there's all these things, but so many
Hmm.
people don't talk about them, they don't share them, and then to others it just looks like, well, their autism is just not as bad as ours, it's
It's
not as
different.
challenging. But more than likely it could be, but no one's openly and I know not everyone's made to share, that's not the case.
Hmm.
But for me, it was on my heart to be able to do that and connect, because once I started connecting with other moms on this journey, it really changed the way I looked at it, the way I felt. I felt so seen, so understood. I felt less alone. And that was by finding other moms in the community. It started off finding a couple on Instagram, and then and then that led me to people in my actual community. And it's just kind of grown off of that, and it's the best decision that you can make is by finding someone else on the journey. So whenever I started sharing originally just about the basics of autism, and
Hmm.
now it's the spelling, I'm like, to me, I'm like, well, I think people need to see how this is going to be hard. This is going to be
Yeah.
challenging, but
Oh
we can
yeah.
still do it. And Barrett, I think Barrett is definitely going to be a challenging case, because he has high support needs. I know my
Yeah.
child can do it, but I know it is going to look different than a lot of others, because of his sensory seeking and some of different things that he has going on. But to me, I'm like, if we can share and show that even people like Barrett, who really do have a lot of high support needs, are capable and that can do this, so can your child. And because I just
Yes.
believe in it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know that a lot of other moms will benefit from seeing your story. Um,
Thank
you
you.
know,
And you know,
from
a
the
lot of the
beginning.
stories, like Houston, and then JB, Handley, and then John Paul, all of them, hearing their
Hmm.
mothers talk about them when they were younger, they sound very similar to what Barrett is now. And they are open
Okay.
communicators, and they are doing amazing things. And but if you listen back, their story was very similar and challenging when they were these young children as well. They were going through basically the things that we're going through now, and I'm like, they're so inspirational because I see
Yeah.
how hard they've worked, how far they've come, and they are just brilliant souls. I mean, just good men now. And I'm like, that is
Yes.
just, and I can see it, and that our children can be the exact same way, but it's going to
Hmm.
take people that believe in them to help that happen, and families behind them, and good resources. And it's just people presuming competence. We just need to
Yeah.
presume competence, because at the end of the day, what is it going to hurt? Isn't that the
Yeah.
least dangerous thing to choose, is to
Yes,
just try
absolutely.
it?
Yeah. Yes, it's the least dangerous because if you presume competence, I mean, if you believe that maybe they're in there and they are, that's a win. But
Yes.
imagine not believing in while they are in there. That's harmful. So,
That's a
yeah.
tragedy. I mean, a
Yeah.
true tragedy, because that, to me, the weight of knowing that my child could feel that that's the way people feel about him when he's completely up there breaks my heart. And I know that it's happening to people all the time,
Yeah.
because that's what we have been made to believe about these kids and these adults. And it's
Yes.
just so far from the truth. But I really do feel like we are learning and things are evolving, but we have to get the word out. We have to let people understand there's so much more, and there are ways to teach these children.
Mhm.
And without us talking about it and talking publicly about it, people will never learn. That's how we're learning about it, because someone chose to
Yes.
stand up and talk
Talk
about
about
it.
it.
And
Mhm.
it's just a matter of time before the word, and the telepathy tapes are huge. They just really
Oh,
like
yeah.
drove this. And but
Yes.
there's also Michaela's Voice that just came out on Netflix. So good. That, to
I
me,
was gonna
anyone
bring
can
it up.
watch it for 24 minutes. 24 minutes, anyone can watch it.
I know. Yeah, I was just gonna say that what you were just saying because I just interviewed her mom
Did
and
you?
her interview, I'm posting it today. And yeah, she talked about how tragic it is, how just heartbreaking it is to have heard Michaela finally share that she could hear her teachers talking about her in
About
front of
her.
her.
Yeah.
That because she couldn't communicate, people think that she is not even in there, so they will just ignore her while she's like right there.
Right there.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is. And I think a lot of people are saying that they presume competence when they probably aren't.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard it is whenever I truly believe this, and I still struggle with it sometimes, right? Like,
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
behavior happens, a mess happens, and you're like, "Oh, why did you do that?" It just seems so it's because it's their bodies. They are not working like they do not have control over their body.
Yeah.
It's just so challenging. So you can see how that is a misconception.
Yeah.
But that the way Michaela, the way her mom talked about it, is that is my fear, and I know that it's happening in places that we go, and
Yeah.
we can't be there all the time. um
Yeah.
and that's just heartbreaking. But one thing that I love that Michaela said, and this just had me just boo-hooing, was whenever she told her dad, she was like, I am different. I am really smart. I process information extremely fast. And she said something just like, "I'm in here," and I was just
Yeah.
like, ah,
No, me
because
too.
and it's not, I think people think, well, maybe those people have it, but if you listen, they all are this way. Like these
Yeah,
non-speakers,
they are
these
that way.
these practitioners that the one on the underestimated documentary, and I talked to Dana in person. I said, well, how many people have come through your program that weren't successful? And Dana said she's never had one that has not been able to
Wow.
spell. And on
You
that
see?
documentary, that the other lady said everyone has been successful. They're not saying like how fast or slow they are at it, but she
Yeah,
said every they believe that every person that comes in can and will. I'm sure each journey looks completely different, but
yeah.
to me that speaks volumes. I mean, it's not like,
Oh,
oh, a
absolutely.
percentage rate where 70% are doing it and the other ones are not. No, they're saying all of them can, and they have been. They have come through these
Ah,
programs.
that's amazing. I feel like yeah,
Mhm.
that is really good for people to hear. That's I'm glad you brought that up because people don't think about that. I saw a post on Instagram that was talking about how sometimes parents might feel like they might see the spellers, right? And be like, "Hmm, good for you, not my child. My child would never do that," you know. And actually, it was, I think it was Elizabeth Bonker. Do you know her?
I
She is the
don't think I
one with
do.
like a few years ago, before all this spellers thing was out. She like it was in the news that she did a talk.
I know
Um,
exactly who you're talking about now.
yeah, she's like,
Yes.
yeah, she has long hair. She's a,
Brilliant.
and so she,
Yes.
yes, she has her own like spellers videos that she shares them for free to teach parents how to
Yes.
do communication for all. And
Hmm.
so yeah, she was sharing on that on her page that it's don't feel like your child would never do this. All of us can do this. We can all do this. You just need to presume competence. You need to believe, and that's the
Yes.
most important part because sometimes you might see a child and be like, "Wow, they're sitting so calmly." I felt that they're sitting so calmly and poking so well. My son could never,
Yeah.
and but
And
that is not true.
we do think that because exactly what you're saying is I multiple times. So whenever Barrett met Miss Kathleen, that's now his practitioner that he sees weekly. We've only gone to her twice so far, and he was just all over the room, very dysregulated. And I just
Mhm.
thought for sure that she was going to be like, "I've never seen a case this bad." Like you think
Yeah.
that stuff. And at the end of it, I'm like, have you seen any other children that are like Barrett? And she's like, yes, like but
Yeah.
they have, like, this is nothing new to them, but to us, it feels like we're going to be the one case that just is
Yes.
not able to do it. But that is so not true. But
Yeah.
it sometimes we just feel like ours is just more challenging. We That's great
Yes.
for you, but we're not going to be able to. But that's not it. I truly, I just know in my heart that all of these kids can do this, and especially Barrett. I'm like, I just
Mhm.
believe in him. But you also have to learn, like, the presuming competence. They need us. That's how their confidence is going to build. Because if they don't feel like we
Yes.
believe in them, then that's gonna. I mean, can you imagine how that would make you feel? You want to
Mm.
know that people believe and know that you can do these things,
Yes.
and that we can
Mhm.
build them up and believe in them, and that is a work in progress, I think, for all of us, because for so long we have been told the opposite. We've been told cognitively delayed, cognitively
Yeah.
disabled, all of these things, when really it's
Yeah.
not a cognitive issue, it's a motor issue.
Issue. Yes. Yeah. That's one thing that people need to always remember that people, yeah, like what you said, we've been told this for so long and we're so used to it that it is hard for us to always remember that. So, what are some misconceptions that some people might have about your son Barrett and other kids who like him?
I would say the biggest misconception that most people have is definitely the fact that they think he's not hearing what they're saying. They talk about him in front of him. They talk to him like a baby. The good thing to remember is talk to them as you would for him. Barrett's 7. Talk to him like you would a 7-year-old child. I have to
Yeah.
remember this too. We
Yeah.
are not perfect with this. For example, I will say go potty. Okay, he's 7. If I would tell his brother that's a little bit older than him to go potty, he would probably look at me like I lost it, right? So these are little things that I too have to be more aware of. But the I mean, people mean well. They really do. They're not trying to be unkind or ugly. But it is just the conversations about him that things that he doesn't need to be listening to are being
Yeah.
hearing, because a lot of them are, they think that he, just because he does act like a much younger child because of the way that he looks and the things that he does, um, they talk about him like a
Right there.
toddler, you know? So I think
Yeah.
that's a really, really huge misconception. I think, oh, another huge thing is Barrett may not be looking at you or standing with you, but they are listening all the time. Barrett never stops moving. A lot of these children are always on the go, but they are listening to everything. And, you know, a lot of the
Yeah.
times people are drilling into eye contact, eye contact. But if I have done, I've listened to so many people and they said that eye contact, feels, it makes them feel bad. It makes the younger kids say it makes them feel yucky sometimes. So I'm like, why
Oh
would we
yeah.
want to do something to make them feel that way? Just because they aren't looking at us in our eyes doesn't mean that they're not listening to absolutely everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
And they are learning nonstop. This is how they are picking up on all of this information. They actually can hear better than we can. I'm
Yeah.
learning that they are hearing things from other rooms and they are just absorbing like all of this information, where it was always hard for me to believe because of what is presenting, you know, the way that we look. Like, for example, when we started doing spelling, I sat down with Mr. Austin, that's what we call him, our practitioner, one of our practitioners, and I was like, well, how is he going to spell when I don't even know if he knows his alphabet, right? Because
Yeah.
Barrett has not been able to prove that he knows his alphabet. And Austin would just, he's like, he knows it. He knows. He was so
Yeah.
confident. And if you start really reading about all these spellers, they say they were reading between the ages of like 3 and 5. They already
Yeah.
knew how to read. And for us, it's hard to wrap our minds around it because we're like, well, how? Like, how could they do that? But
Yeah.
they are learning in ways that even our brain, our human brain, might not be able to understand right now. And that has been
Yeah.
new for me. So that I'm having to also, those misconceptions, I have them as well.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just, I'm having to learn, like I just have to just trust, just pray, just continue the process. I'm trusting the practitioners at these, the way that they line it up. I'm like, are we sure he can like spell those words and stuff? And they are so confident, these practitioners, because
Yes.
they do it. They know how these children are. And the thing is, the way that they know how our children's brains work is so foreign to us, because our neurotypical children, their brains don't work that way. The way
It's
that we
different.
learn is so different. You cannot compare apples to oranges in this scenario. And I think that is
Yeah.
why so many people have such, they're so skeptical, because to them it doesn't make sense. And I get it. But that doesn't mean that it's not true. It's just, we're just going to have to be more open minded to a lot of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said. I also struggle with some of these misconceptions. And like for example, there was a time that so my son started spelling at 4,
Mhm.
and he was spelling, but we just could not believe it. We couldn't, because
Yeah.
we didn't know if he knew, like what you said, we didn't know if he knew his letters. And
Yeah.
then we noticed that if you give him a phone, or he loves laptops, if
Mhm.
he gets anybody's laptop, he's able to find his favorite Mickey Mouse episode on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, how does he do that? It's because he can
Yeah.
read. He can
Hmm.
read, and he knows to touch certain. He knows to search for it.
Yeah.
I was like, we never had thought about that. Like, wait a minute, he can read. He can read,
Mhm.
and it's crazy. He taught
It
himself how to
is.
use the remote, the TV remote. He can read.
Yes.
So,
It's crazy. And it is because, you know, you go back to, after I listened to the telepathy tapes, I actually reached back out to Austin, because the way Austin would like explain things to me, I knew he knew exactly what he was talking about, but it was almost like I just still couldn't wrap my head around it, you know?
mhm.
And after I listened to the telepathy tapes, I actually reached out to Austin. I was like, hey, I said, this is the reason why you told me not to worry about if Barrett knew his alphabet, wasn't it? And he said, Yes. But
Okay.
he can't come and tell us these things. Can you imagine if your practitioners are coming to tell you about the things we're learning about on the telepathy tapes? We would think they were crazy.
Oh boy. Yep.
We would not be able to. And so, like, he approached it the way that he, you need to, because you don't want to make
Yes.
these parents be scared and then them think, well, I'm not going to do this
And then
therapy because that's
yes.
crazy. But
Yep.
now that we have heard all this information, for me, that's the confirmation that made it all start to make more sense. Like, this is
Yeah.
how these children are doing this, because where I didn't understand, now I have the information, as crazy as it sounds. It
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to see other things going on that's like in the tapes, and I'm like, whoa, that's what's happening right now. I didn't
Yeah.
know that's what you were doing, but now I'm recognizing these things that they're talking about in the tapes that Barrett is experiencing. And
Yes.
it's amazing.
Yep. I love that. Yep. Yeah. Same with me. Yeah. After listening, I was able to be like, wait a minute. Okay, so that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, and things make sense. Make sense. And I've it another thing that has helped with the telepathy tapes. It's helped my intuition um in relation to my son be stronger. I'm able
Yes.
to notice. I'm more tuned in now. I'm looking at things differently, like where he might be right now. For example, he's communicating through Bluey episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how Bluey's so deep, and
Yeah.
so he has found Bluey episodes, little snippets that are so deep. Like
Mm-hmm.
if connect in connection, like my intuition is telling me is translating. Sometimes it's just clear as day. Like what lately he's not able to sleep. He's not sleeping lately. He
Yeah.
struggles with sleep, and he will listen to the episode that says, "I can't fall asleep." And like the mom is like, just try Bluey. And he's like, oh, I can't fall asleep. And he keeps listening to it over and over.
Over and over again.
I'm like, he is trying to say he didn't sleep last night. I know he didn't, because
Yeah.
lately he doesn't come out of his room. He will just stay in bed and laugh and giggle, and we
Yeah.
know what he's doing in that
Exactly.
moment.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but I'm like, wow, he is really communicating. So he's like next to me listening to other episodes, and he's like, I'm like, wow, I understand what you're trying to say. So I'm trying to reassure him. So I'll say, buddy, I know exactly what you're trying to tell me, and most of it is like sad stuff. And another thing that people, might not realize is that our kids that are non-speakers struggle in their silence. That's another thing that Michaela shared. It's hard. Can you imagine being in your brain by yourself all the time?
All the
Like you're
time.
around people, you might be around people that love you, but
Yeah.
to be around people that love you and you still kind of feel lonely because you're not able to
Oh,
share exactly how you feel, and maybe your body is not showing exactly how you feel, because my son will
yes.
be listening to his another way he's communicating is through a sad song that is
Mhm.
like, I sometimes I feel a little bit sad. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh my
And
God.
so, but
Yeah.
he's listening to that and he's jumping on the trampoline, giggling and laughing.
Yeah.
How sad is that
Right.
visual? Like he's
Yes.
laughing and giggling, but he's sharing. Like I have goosebumps. It's like, oh, so heartbreaking.
It is.
So that's some like when I tell my husband, he's like, he's happy. Don't you see he's happy? I'm like, that's not what I'm feeling here. Like right now, I feel it. I feel it so deep. Like his sadness is so deep, and I feel it.
Yes.
And it's like that's
We've been seeing like a functional health practitioner, and they do these scans. It's like
mhm,
there's two different ones, but one of them is like acupuncture without the needles, and they do it in certain areas of their body. And Barrett's top
mhm,
three is like it talks about emotions, and it goes into like your spleen, like all different body parts and things. And Barrett's top three was lonely, hopeless, and I think helpless. And that was his top three. And she said, I know this is hard to hear, Mom. She specializes in autism. And she said, this is about what most of these children are feeling, because they are stuck. And what is referred to as a silent prison. They're stuck in these, they have full thoughts and minds like everyone else, but they literally cannot get how they feel or communicate anything out. So I mean, like I would imagine that would feel very helpless and hopeless and
Yeah.
lonely. And that's what's made me that's even made the drive harder. Like I've got to figure out how he can
Yes.
communicate and like communicate much more than handing me a picture card of a piece of pizza
Yes.
or a ball. I mean,
Hmm.
I need him to be able to tell me how he feels, not to be able, he needs
Exactly.
choices, not just to choose a card. That to me, yeah, that's wonderful if we can express our wants and needs. But can you imagine if we could only express our wants and needs when we have so many things to say?
To
Um,
say,
yeah. And if you listen,
yeah.
all of these non-speakers that are out, they have so much to say, like
Oh, yeah.
amazing things to say. I cannot wait until I can hear
Mhm.
my son tell me all of his thoughts and feelings, because that will just be
Yes.
an amazing day.
I know, me too. I cannot wait. I can't wait. Um, I have a friend who has her son who is a speller, and I've been like on the phone call, and he'll be spelling for me,
Yeah,
and he won't stop, and I just love it. He just
yeah.
kept going, just kept going. I'm like, wow, you have so much to
To
say, and
say.
it's always so beautiful, like
Mhm.
their way of how they talk, you know.
Oh,
Oh,
it's not what we're used to. If you pay attention, and I know you have, the
yeah,
way that they word things, it's not of this realm, maybe.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
very sophisticated and beautiful the way that
Yeah.
their words flow.
Hmm.
It's different. It's not like the speakers.
Yes.
It's very
Absolutely.
it's recognizable, and they from what I've seen, all of them kind of talk this way too. It feels very
Hmm.
regular in the non-speakers of how they're communicating.
Yes, absolutely. And it just brings me to the topic of the naysayers.
Ugh,
How could they think that these parents are the ones giving cues for their kids to spell these things? Like these parents, all the parents that I've been talking to, interviewing, they'd be like, I would never, how could I say those things in that way? Like,
yeah, you feel
so
like
it's
it's crazy. Like,
it's
one,
crazy.
they're most of the time these children are far smarter than their parents ever could be, so it's
Yeah.
not even like we could pull that information out the way that they're sharing it. And two, what's the purpose? Why would these people do this? Like, and this is not a couple people, this is thousands of people that are going through
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one, like, we don't have something else better to do, like, I guarantee
Yes.
you these people, that's not how they're going to want to spend their time. But only time will tell. There's that quote in the guidebook, and I posted it on my story the other day, but it was like 3 steps of truth. The first one is basically, I think people think you're crazy. The second
Mhm.
one is people are going to just really oppose it. That's not true. That's not true. And then the third one is it's going to be evident in itself. We're not going
Mhm.
to have to prove anything, because you
Yeah.
people will be able to literally see for themselves what is happening. And a lot of these speakers, they're now not needing any communication partner. I mean, they're just typing,
Yes,
they're
it's
just
just
doing,
going. Yep.
if they're not needing that. But it's like riding a bicycle. Like, you have to start off with training wheels, right? And then,
Yes.
because we're having to motor coach them to be able to help put your eyes on the board. There's what people don't understand is there's so many little pieces to make them be successful with this. It's not like us where we would just go up there and start t- pointing to letters. It's literally taking everything in their body to make them say, I got to get this finger up, I have to move it that way, my eyes need to look. It's motor coaching, and it's
Yeah.
so challenging. And yes, they do need prompts, but the thing is what people need to pay more attention to, those prompts are removed.
Yes. It
You do that,
goes
and
to
they do not always
phase it
need the
out.
prompts.
Mhm.
And most of the time the prompts are pretty, I mean, like, sometimes they're just like putting their finger at an elbow or something, just to give them
Yes.
that like
Little bit
stability.
of, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the moms on the telepathy tapes shared that their child didn't know um where their body was.
In
Manisha
space.
shared that Akil didn't know that he wasn't aware of his body. And so
Yes.
he kids like that he shared that he needs that for you to hold his hand so he knows where his hand is,
In
so he can be
space.
able to point.
they were saying that he didn't even know he had hands. I mean, because he cannot
Yes,
feel his
yeah.
hands. And that part actually made me understand more about Barrett. And then I also listened to another thing. I think it was with Katie Houston's mom on a different podcast, but they
Mm-hmm.
were talking about how like Barrett always has sticks, and they specifically talked about sticks. And Barrett also stems with just objects all the time. And they said that is how they can tell where their body is in space, because otherwise it's
Oh,
almost like they don't even recognize their body, almost like
the
you'd be like
body.
no gravity or something like that.
Yeah, the telepathy tapes has been a blessing
they,
because
they
yeah, it's
really
been able.
have.
Most parents are now able to understand their kids and what they're doing, or why they're
Mhm.
doing it. It's we all struggle with that because our kids can't tell us what they're going through, and what
Exactly.
they are totally different from our neurotypical kids. And being able to hear and know why they're doing it, that just opens up
It's
everything.
huge. The have you ever read the book is Edu in Autism Land?
I've heard about it, not
Oh,
yet. I haven't read it yet.
so good. There, I literally have like so many pages flagged because he talks about things like dumping, pouring water out. Like Barrett, he's a big person to love to spill drinks and pour them out, but he even still pours drinks out like as a teenager whenever he was writing this book, and he is talking about why these things are happening. And I'm like, it made me understand
Okay.
Barrett so much more, and it made me realize there was so much more going on than just dumping a drink out. It was
Yeah.
it was I discovered that book around the same time as Underestimated. I would highly recommend that one, and it's a short read. My mom's reading it right now and she's learning so much from it.
Okay.
But it's like all of
Okay.
these little pieces, and then it teaches us more about our kid. Back to telepathy tapes, I really do wish. Okay, so I think the word telepathy really throws some people for a loop, and it makes them think. If you really pay attention, a lot of these non-speakers are saying that they don't even know if the word telepathy would be the word to use necessarily, because some
Yeah.
people hear that word and they think of it as woo woo.
Yeah.
I
Woo
guess
woo.
you could
Yes.
say yes.
Yep.
But I think
Absolutely.
it's bigger than telepathy, but it's hard to put it into words at the same time. I think it is very spiritual. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of intuition and connection, and um,
Yes.
it's more than just what it sounds like. And I think sometimes some people can't get over the word telepathy into
Yeah.
because they're stuck on that word. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
they're like, telepathy? What? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel. And I did notice that when listening to episode 10, is specifically episode 10, when
Yeah.
the non speakers were sharing, most of them, were actually that talked about it, were saying telepathy, as you might call it,
Yes,
like,
as you might
and
call
then
it.
and then they would go on to say, it's very hard for us to put into words that you know would be able to contextualize, to be able to understand, because yes, it is way more than mind reading.
Yes.
And I talked to my friend that I was just mentioning. She said her son does not like the word telepathy because it takes away the spiritual aspect of it. She said that he explains it more as spirit to spirit communication,
Yes.
transfer of information.
Hmm.
And that, I love that, because
I love that
listening
too.
yeah. Listening to the telepathy tapes, you can just know if you're a Christian, you just know that this sounds so true to the
Yes.
gospel,
Oh,
aligns so
it's
perfectly. And her son is one of those that are like more talking about God and spiritual. And yeah, he doesn't like the word telepathy because that's not how he sees it. He knows it's you're communicating with a spirit to spirit,
yes.
and that's what
Uh,
it is. That's what it sounds
This
like
is so
everyone
much
is trying to say.
what people don't understand. As a Christ follower, personally, I see the telepathy tapes and the spirit to spirit and all of those things. I see this as something much bigger than just getting out spell to communicate, and these non-speakers. I feel like the Lord, they're kind of like God's chosen people, right? Like,
Mhm.
for us it's hard to wrap our mind around it because we have been conditioned for so long to think they are disabled, and they are a lot of people. less than, not fully competent to do things. But really, if you think about it, the way the Lord has chosen them is completely flipped. They're closer to Him than any of us could ever be. A lot of them
Yeah.
talk about how whenever you can't speak, you spend a lot of time talking to God. Just talking to God all
Yes.
day long in your mind
Mm-hmm.
and in your thoughts. And these relationships that they have on this spiritual level and with their Heavenly Father, and them talking about angels and things, it's
Yeah.
a different realm. But
Mm-hmm.
it's harder for us to understand because we are just so, there's ego, there's we're just always
Yeah.
talking all the time and doing all these things, where they are in silence, so they are
Yes.
experiencing things that we never could even understand. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that these tapes have a ton to also do with the spiritual side, and for people to be, it's
Yes.
almost like an awakening of some sort.
Yeah.
um
Absolutely.
yeah.
I feel like, yeah, you can just know, you can just feel that something bigger is happening. And I just feel like it's God just making things happen and letting, actually, one of the kids in the on the episode 10 said that. Like, God is letting this happen for a reason.
Yes, this is happening for a reason. And there is no reason, to me, the reason why these tapes are so successful. Yeah, there's a lot of naysayers, absolutely. But you're going to have that no matter where you go. There's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be
Absolutely.
people that every route you go. But I think for the most part, a lot of people are getting a lot of good from this, because if anything, we are learning that these children, we've got to get spelled to communicate out. Like, that is just front
Oh
and
yeah.
center. It's got to happen. That they're in there. They have been in there all of this time. But most importantly, this is the Lord revealing all of this to us.
Mm-hmm.
He's the
Yeah.
one that
Oh
has
yeah.
shown this to everybody. And it was kind of like, we cannot keep ignoring this. This is, now that we know, like for me, it's like, how can I not pursue this whenever I now know about it? Like, you can't go and
Yeah.
unknow. I can't unknow what I now know. So, like, for me, there
Yeah.
is no other option. This is it for Barrett. And I want
Yes.
other people to know it too, because this is the real deal. I
Yeah.
fully feel confident about it. And I mean, it's just the naysayers. Yeah. At the same time, it's like, yeah, you know, you can do that. But like they said, in time, truth will tell. In time, is
Yes.
all going to be very obvious. It already is. If people really pay
Yes.
attention, and if they
Mm-hmm.
really look into the non speakers, the ones that have been doing this for years and years and years, there's proof. I mean,
Yeah.
but now it's going to get to the point where now it's just moving rapidly. I believe we're going to start
Yes.
seeing more practitioners, more centers open, and
Oh
it's a
yeah.
matter of time before we need to get it into our school system, insurance to pay for it. But we have to talk about it. We have to share it,
Yeah.
and we have to push for
Mm-hmm.
it. And it's going to take moms like me and you, along
Mm-hmm.
with tons of others, to be able to get it out there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I do feel like these kids um are kind of like behind most of like us moms connecting. I have been connecting with
Oh,
so many moms. Like I have goosebumps, like in such a deep level. And like will have like things in common and like us connecting and other like on Facebook, you'll just find somebody and they'll just start just connecting on such a deep level. And
yes.
I've had so many experiences lately that are like, wow. I think like we will like even say like these kids, like something bigger is happening out there,
Oh,
and I feel like these kids
absolutely.
connect, and they're like, I feel like because us moms we have that potential of like we have. It's not like I don't want to say that dads are. How do I say it? My husband, if I don't know if it's the same with yours, but he's more like logical about things,
Yes,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
so like the moms are the ones that are really pushing this because we have that intuition, we're following we have the heart's part, and so I feel like these kids just know that about us, and they're like trying to get the moms connected, and we're really, I feel like we're a part of what's going to move this forward, you
a
know.
hundred percent.
Like,
It's all
yeah.
making sense. It's like everything is making sense, like
Yeah.
it's all, and
Yes.
we're watching it unfold, but we're also a part of it. And I do think, for us being women of faith, Christ followers, I think the Lord knew He was going to have to put some pretty strong women of faith in these positions to have enough courage and bravery to share about these things publicly, because not just anyone will or can do that.
Yeah.
And I do believe that you and I and so many other people were chosen to do this, because I believe in Jesus, right?
Yes.
And it's going to, you start to see, you're like, man, this was not always a tragedy. Like a lot of people do
Yeah.
autism as a tragedy. This is hard. No, there was something bigger brewing from the very beginning before we could have ever understood it. And we were put on this path for a very specific purpose and a very specific reason, because he needed us to be a part of this movement, to be able to help change the lives of our non-speakers. And
Yes.
that was, it was set in play, in motion, and we had no idea, and we were just going every step of the way. But if you look back, you're like, okay, that makes sense. That makes
Yes.
sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I've had so many moments where like, wow, yeah. Yep, that makes sense. That makes
That makes
sense.
sense.
We're yeah, we've been chosen for a reason, and it's
Mhm.
it's been just beautiful to see the journey. Like where we are right now, it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. It doesn't make it any less hard or challenging.
Oh,
We
it
still have
doesn't.
our
Oh
terribly
no.
hard
Yeah.
days. And it's just kind of like autism. It's up and down always. It's never
Mm-hmm.
smooth sailing. I mean, every now and then you'll get a little stretch of smooth.
Yeah.
But we kind of just understand that's going to be the life that we have, and I've come to accept
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
But luckily for us, being able to have these resources like Spell to Communicate, it gives so much hope that this life is going to be just so much more beautiful and joyful than we could have ever imagined. And it's
Yes.
just, and you can see it. Now, is it going to take
Mm-hmm.
work? Absolutely. Are we going to have to push really hard for our kids
Oh
to
yeah.
be believe and treated a certain way? Absolutely. But it's, it's just so, it's beautiful. It really is.
Yes. Absolutely. So, as we're getting to the end of our episode, I just wanted to ask you one last question that I always ask parents. So, what is something that Barrett has taught you about life?
Barrett has taught me so many amazing things about life. He has changed my perception of everything. He has made me realize what truly is important and what is not important. Before autism and before Barrett's autism came into our world, I think I cared too much about what other people thought about my goals, and everything is just kind of switched. He's so authentic and real that he has shifted me to be more authentic and real. Like if it wasn't for Barrett, I don't know if I could have ever been to this place. I don't care about so many things that I feel like so many people are stuck on in the world,
Yeah.
between materialism and needing to be validated by certain people. For me, that none of that matters, and it is so liberating to be able to just shed that, right? Just be able to just to be my true authentic self. Barrett taught me that. I don't know if I would have
Yeah.
ever been able to have gotten to that point if it was not for Barrett. And he is my inspiration because he shows up authentically like himself every single day. And that has really changed the dynamic for our family, which I just love. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be living, honestly, as joyful of a life that I am now, because I think I probably put more into the category of happiness, which is temporary and
Yeah.
fleeting, and it's based off of what's currently going on. But joy, I can find joy even in the darkest days, because joy is the real good stuff. And that is what Barrett has taught me. And he's taught me to seek the joy in the journey. No matter how hard it gets, I can slow down and focus and find some joy in there. But you have to choose to
Yeah.
look for it on a lot of those days.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Ah, that is beautiful. Our kids really have that power to teach us so much about ourselves and teach us more than anybody could teach us in our
Absolutely.
whole entire lives. Yeah.
100%.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Your story is beautiful, and I just know that a lot of parents will continue. I mean, you have been so inspirational to people already. I mean, you
Thank
have
you
such a
so
beautiful community
much.
that you've created, and I'm just so excited for you to show your spelling journey and I know I will learn so much from you, even though we already have been in it. We're kind of still on the same level. My son is just 6, and he's
Mhm.
not yet open. But yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see, and I know that a lot of families will benefit a lot from following your journey,
Thank you so much for
your
having
spelling
me.
journey.
This has
Hmm.
been so fun being able to chat with you. I just love being able to have these conversations with
Yes.
people because especially talking to another mom that just truly gets it and believes it. It's
Yeah.
it just fills my cup. It's like okay,
Yes, me too.
it's so important for us to be able to continue to connect with people like that because that's what's going to keep us strong and our face, like just like we got to get it done, because sometimes we get
Yeah.
so the naysayers can scream so loud that we have to
Oh
really
yeah.
be able to find these like-minded parents on the journey to help keep us strong and to keep going in the direction that we know is best.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It can be lonely. So yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good whenever, like, I feel it too. I always appreciate when I'm able to talk to a mom that gets it.
Yes.
Yeah, what we're going through, it's not most parents are going through it. So it's good to
Absolutely.
have somebody that gets it. So
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, I'd love to keep in touch, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll continue to follow along. And yeah, I will put your information in the description
Oh,
for
perfect.
this video so people can find you, because yeah, you that I need people need, to see your story and to follow along
Thank you so much,
your
Nicole.
yes, you're very welcome. Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can get notified whenever I post new content. Until next time.